Hey guys, welcome to the shop. It's Tanner with Built Not Bought, and we are going to start a unique white oak dining table, or should I say dining tables. I've got some rough cut white oak, very heavy, very expensive, but also very beautiful. And we're going to get started milling and getting everything ready to glue up that top. Prior to milling this beautiful white oak lumber, I let it acclimate to my shop for about 2.5 to 3 weeks, and then I run it through and face joint one of the sides of these boards. Then I flip it on its side and run it through on the edge. After this, I can straight line rip the following edge, and then lastly, we run it through the planer, and this is going to get us a board that is surfaced on all four sides with all of the corners at 90 degrees. Although these steps are kind of monotonous and repetitive, they are crucial in building a proper dining table top. And it's pretty satisfying seeing that rough timber turn into a beautiful plain surface. Just for fun, in the comments down below, guess how many times I had to empty my dust collection drum during the duration of this build. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe. The majority of the people that watch my videos are not subscribers, and just one click of the button can make a huge impact on my life. Thank you so much to those that have already subscribed. And with that material all ready to go for the top, it's time to focus on the base of these two tables, and these are going to have a pedestal base. Now, this is the second time that I've attempted to build pedestals. The first time was pretty rough, I will admit. And what I've grown to find out is pedestals are extraordinarily beautiful and elegant, but they require a ton of labor hours in order to get them looking pristine. And the reason for all that labor is you have these heavy glued up chunks that make up the structure of the pedestal, and then you have to cut through large thicknesses of lumber to create the shape and all those cool ins and outs designs on that pedestal itself, and it requires a ton of hand tool cleanup in the end. And while it does sound like I'm complaining a little bit, it truly is a labor of love. The end product is so worth all of the time and effort and frustration that goes along with building these pedestal bases. And before I can start cutting out those pedestals, I like to do a bunch of layout work to make my life a little bit easier as we progress through every step. So I find the midlines and the center points of all sides of these glued up panels, and then I can take the template that I've made and trace it on all of the faces. And you'll see later on as I'm cutting these out why I'm doing this process, because as you're going through and making cuts, you're removing chunks of this panel, and some of those will have the reference lines completely removed as I cut. So having all sides with some form of a reference makes life just a little bit easier. Now for the rest of the day, I'm going to absolutely abuse my bandsaw. I ended up snapping 2 blades during this build project, and it was kind of expected because these are such large chunks and white oak is extremely hard and heavy, but we were able to get them all cut out and looking good in the end. Well, sort of. I actually ended up having to throw out a pedestal completely because I wasn't satisfied with how it looked after getting it cleaned up a little bit, and I had to create a whole new one. And this actually happened on the first project that I built pedestals for. So now I have 2 botched pedestals just sitting around the shop. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll just leave them there to remind me to learn from my mistakes. And you can see in the video now, I'm taping on those pieces that I cut off right away. And that's because I need to have a flat surface to run through my bandsaw. And if those chunks were not taped back on, there's no way I could get clean cuts anymore. So every piece that gets removed, I tape back on and try to keep all of my reference lines lined up in order to get a good product. And these videos are sped up dramatically. This took a very long time. There's so much material to cut through. Well, I think it's going to be salvageable, but this one didn't come out as good as I would like. Mostly just these top details where you're cutting in and out and all these angles and stuff. So on attempt number 2, I'm switching things up a little bit. So foreshadowing, I actually ended up throwing that one away. And on the second pedestal, what I did is cut out these top and bottom details first, while that block was still mostly intact before cutting out those curves. And then, of course, double-sided tape and that painter's tape to stick those pieces on. so that they wouldn't shift as I was making my cuts through the bandsaw. And this worked much better. And I ended up making the second and third ones using this method and had a much cleaner end result. And that first one is just going to get scrapped. But don't get me wrong, and as you can see, there is a ton of cleanup work left on these pedestals, and this is where the true work really begins. And here you can see me removing those offcuts that I had double-sided taped on, and that tape really does hold them well into place. And this is really that first look at what these pedestals are going to end up being. And over the next several days, I used chisels as well as my new Dremel tool with some burr attachments from Kutzall to kind of clean up all of these tight little crevices. And I kind of needed to give my hands a little bit of a break from all the abuse, so I switched gears and started working on that tabletop. I had all those boards perfectly milled, and now they're ready to glue up. And this little video here shows how tight those edges are going to be. That's a sign that all of your equipment is set up properly, and it makes these glue ups go much more flawlessly. And later on, we're going to turn this large glued up top into two tabletops because my client wants to have some versatility and be able to push these tables together when needed and also use them individually when the time arises. The lower leg portion of the pedestals are going to get a giant half lap to create a big X that's going to support this base and give it some rigidity. There's probably a more efficient way to do this. All these curve cuts do make for a lot of cleanup work and they're just time consuming. Let me know in the comments if you've got a more efficient way to create half laps. This way does work though. This is actually a die grinder with a Kutzall bit in it, and it works nice for those tight crevices. What are you doing, bud? You got there, Steve. Who made you those? Dad. You like them? Yeah. And despite a really busy schedule, I still do my best to be as good of a dad as I can be, and spent a little bit of time in the combine with my son Kai, and he loves to come out into the wood shop. And for Halloween this year, he's going to be Steve from Minecraft, and he needed a couple weapons to go along with his costume, so I quickly made a sword and an axe for him. Now back to the top, I didn't video cutting it in half, but I simply used a track saw to clean up all four edges. And the pedestal is going to be attached to the legs or the base portion with a large mortise and tenon. And I started doing this about a year ago. Instead of just like chiseling it all out and routering it by hand, just grab some scrap plywood and create a little template right on top of where that mortise is. Then all you need is a flush trim bit, and you can hog out all of that material really quickly and accurately. The only downside to this is all of the corners are going to be rounded out, so you have to clean them all up with a chisel, but it works pretty gosh darn well. And we're doing a little test fit here, and this is where that excitement really starts to ramp up a little bit. All that hard, tedious labor is really coming together. All right, guys, we are back in the shop. It's been kind of a long time. Fall is an absolutely hectic time of year for me. I'm a teacher, I'm a football coach. We've got harvest with the farm work. We just had a baby, and I'm trying to get client builds done and then also like gift ideas for the holidays coming up. So the time in the shop is few and far between, so I try to maximize whenever I'm out here, take a ton of caffeine and get to work. The pedestals are coming along really nicely. The base and the actual pedestal piece are epoxy together. I used epoxy instead of glue just to give me some more time to get everything together without that glue setting up. Now for the top, I'm just gonna make like a little X support bracket that will fasten to the underside of the table. And to do that, I'm simply taking two pieces of oak and doing a half lap and creating an X. So essentially, it's gonna look like that, but of course, this will be nice and flat across the top, and we're going to bevel these so it just looks a little bit better. And this miter saw is ridiculously expensive, but I credit it for this. Cutting out these half laps on it works so well. The stop block on it is unlike any other saw I've used. And with the half laps cut out, I was able to get some glue on them and get them clamped together. While they're clamping, I'm going to start sanding away on the table. And notice the fly swatter. The flies and the bugs have been so terrible this fall, and there's some foreshadowing here for a catastrophic failure later in the video. Stay tuned for that. Putting some paste wax on the screws to attach the top to the pedestal. It's glued, and then countersunk screws going in. And if you could see my face during this clip, it would be a grin from ear to ear. All this work is really coming together nicely, and I'm very pleased with how these pedestals are looking. Well, guys, we are getting towards that final push on this project, and the client wants the corners of these tabletops to have a radius on them. This is a little bit nerve-wracking, I'm not gonna lie, because everything is pretty much finished. I even sprayed the clear coat on these. I've got a radius jig here. The thing about this particular jig is I have to basically double-sided tape it to the bottom and then use a massive flush trim bit, which I have currently in my router. And there's just all types of bad things that can happen when creating a cut with a router bit like this, especially in this super hard white oak. So I did a relief cut with my jigsaw, and we're gonna attempt to do this with minimal damage, and then I'll have to round over this curve to match these ones here. Well, guys, it's a Saturday night. Just got in from combining all day. I farm a little bit as well, and I'm gonna lose quite a bit of money farming this year. So if you know any farmers, keep them in your thoughts, because it's gonna be a tough year. And to make matters worse, I get home to find out that I had left my door to the shop open, and it had been open for like almost 30 hours. Right after I finish those tabletops. From afar, it doesn't look too bad. It actually looks pretty good. But upon closer inspection, we've got fly crap all over it. And the thing about that fly shit is it's like glued on there. It doesn't just like flake off. You have to scratch it off. So I'm not kidding you. I'm gonna have to re-sand, like scuff sand, and respray both of those tops because they're covered in fly shit. Living the dream, baby. Living the dream. And I'm taking no chances this time around. I've got the fly swatter equipped at all times, and then I'm using this little sanding attachment on my multi-tool to help refine some of those nooks and crannies that we were using the Dremel tools on earlier. And at this point, we're like 95% done, but that last 5% seems to take a lot longer than one would imagine. And that's drilling holes to attach the bases to the tabletops, putting threaded inserts and leg levelers into the legs, and then this unforeseen task of sanding off fly poop and refinishing the tabletops. I just used some 220 grit sandpaper and basically treated this finish like I was adding another coat, and this is what I do in between each coat that I spray on. And then I mask up because spraying any sort of finish is pretty toxic and harmful, even the water-based stuff. And I put on the final coat, this time truly the final coat on the tabletops. I come back in the next day and I had already previously marked the spots where the holes from the base are going to attach to the top. And now I'm drilling holes for the threaded inserts that are going to accept a bolt and a washer that is elongated to allow for seasonal change. And there's going to be 4 bolts that hold these tables in place. I've used this method dozens of times and it's really my tried and true. I don't really foresee myself using any other method unless I'm making a very unique style of table. And that is a wrap on this project. I'm really, really happy with how this all came together, but more importantly, my client is thrilled about it too, and that is the best feeling as a craftsman. This table was a unique challenge for me, and I'm getting better at the pedestals, but still had a few setbacks. This is the table in its forever home on a golf course near Fargo, and the home is absolutely beautiful and it fits right in. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. I greatly appreciate it, and we will see you on the next build.